G'day, it's Christine here from ChrisW Designs, and today I'm going to talk to you about rivets. So many people find rivets scary. Well, in this tutorial I'm about to show you that they're not really so scary after all. They're really a lot of fun. Yes, believe me, they are. No, truly, they're not hard. I used to sew my straps and rivet, but now I find that I just rivet. I have very little problem with rivets coming apart, and usually when they do, it's because I have used the wrong size. Okay, so here we have some rivets. We have a 8mm cap with a 6mm shank. That's the shank. Usually the cap size is listed first, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the shank size is first and then the cap size, so you need to double check with whoever's selling your rivets to see which way they are writing it. This one here is an 8 by 8, so it's an 8mm shank with an 8mm cap, and this is a 10mm shank with a 8mm cap. I like to stick to certain size caps so that I have a uniform look throughout my bag if they are using different size rivets, because sometimes you might want a smaller one in a certain spot in the same bag, as in smaller shank length. So in that case I would use my 6mm shank in a spot where I've only got very small layers, and where I have a thicker layer I would use the 8 or 9mm or 10mm shank, whatever you happen to have. This is a 10mm shank. This one here is a 9mm cap, and you can see the difference between the 8mm cap and 9mm cap. It's quite a bit of difference, even though it's only 1mm, but that's what that is. And here we have a 6mm cap and a 6mm shank. There are certain times when I would use this tiny little rivet. Usually if I'm making a smaller bag or a smaller pouch or something, I may only want a small rivet, so that's when I would use these tiny rivets. You can get single capped rivets which look like this, so that's the side you would see in your work, and this one would be hidden inside your bag. Typically I do not buy these. I just always have the double cap rivets on hand, then I don't have to worry about whether the back piece is going to be hidden inside my bag or not, because you would not want that to be showing on the outside of your bag. So you wouldn't use one of these where you will have both sides of the rivet visible. So that's why it's always a good idea just to stick with the double caps, then you don't have to worry about it. If you don't like rivets, these are what are called Chicago screws, and as you can see, the top is your nice little shiny bit that you see, and at the back you've got a screw, and these simply screw together, so you don't have to worry about setting and bending rivets because they just screw together. They also come in different shank lengths and different styles as well. I typically stick to this style of rivet. You can get ones that are much more bigger domed. You can get ones that look like crystals. There are many different types that you can choose from these days. You need to punch a hole first. I typically use a 3mm hole punch for the larger rivets, but when I'm getting down into the smaller sizes, then I will use a 2mm hole punch. I have a hole punch that goes into my hand press, and you can see that here. It has a flat surface that you punch on, and then the punch is at the top, and it looks like this. Has the little hole bit there, and you can see that it's full of bits that I've been punching. Normally you just have to clean that out occasionally, otherwise it'll get blocked solid, and I have had that happen where it's blocked up solid and I was not able to punch anymore, and I thought my punch was broken, but it was just simply blocked solid with pieces of fabric. So don't forget to clean that out every now and again. And that same thing applies to the hand punches. They do fill up, and there's a little groove there which you need to empty out from time to time. And there's quite a bit stuck in here. So that just screws into my cam press. Now I will say here that it's worth noting that these presses don't always have the same thread size. So if you stick with the cam press, that seems to be a more common size, and you can get the right dies to fit in there. I bought this other one here, it's an imported one, and this size is different than the hole is a different size to that, and also the thread is different size. My rivet setting dies will not screw into the cam press because I had this machine first before I realized that they do come with different thread sizes, and this was a Chinese imported version which I got, and found out later that I couldn't get punches for like these, so I had to buy another press, the cam press, so I could buy punches for it. They only had dies. It's actually handy to have the two because I pretty much always just leave my hole punch set up there. Since I've got the rivet setting tools in this particular size here, I use that for that and that for the hole punch, and yeah, it's very handy. I do find them a lot easier to use than your anvil and setter. They are a good starting point, and then you can see how you like setting rivets, and if you want to keep using them, then I do recommend you invest in a hand press. Now, one of the main things to remember when you are setting rivets, if you are setting them with a manual tool like this, you need to make sure it's held perpendicular. It needs to be exactly upright. If you hold it at an angle while you try and set your rivet, you will bend your stem. You need to keep it upright, and you need to have your cap sitting right down into the curve of the anvil so that it sits nice neatly in there. That protects the shape of your rivet. Now, another thing to remember is not to whack or wallop the life out of this. They do not need walloping really hard. It actually doesn't take much. You're better off to do a few extra gentle taps to set it than trying to wallop the life out of it, and then you end up with a flattened or damaged cap. Now, to get the right stem length, because you need to bear in mind your stem length when you are setting your rivets, you need to find the right length. Now, this is not real thick, so I'm going to check with my 6mm first, and I put that in there, and what you do is you just grab your thumbs and compress the layers around your rivet. Now, if you can see the little knobbly bit sticking out at that point, when you compress, don't worry about it not being sticking out when it's just sitting normal. It needs to be when it's compressed. If that's sticking out, the knobbly bit's out, then you have the right shaft length. So that would be the right size for this one, the 6mm. Just supposing I was putting in that 10mm, you can see that that is way too long. That will just bend, it will go sideways when you try and set it. Now, if I had a lot of layers and I put my 6mm in there and it wasn't showing out even when I compressed the layers, then my rivet post would be too short, and in that case my rivet will pop open in use. So you need to make sure that that pops out. I like to see all of my knobbly bit when my layers are firmly compressed, and then I'm happy that I have the right shaft length. The cap size is more a look thing, although if you are making a big heavy leather bag and you want strong straps, I don't recommend using a tiny cap because then it could pull through. So I do bear in mind the size of the cap with the work that I am doing. I like to use the 9mm caps on a larger size bag. It is handy to have that extra size cap for extra grab. Rivets come in many different colours. You can get brass, you can get black, you can get nickel, you can get gold, you can get rose gold, you can get antique brass, you can get just about any colour you can think of, rainbow in the rivets. Now I will say that it does not pay to buy cheap rivets because cheap rivets are not reliable. I suggest you buy them from a good quality supplier. I get mine from Cereal Bag Makers in Belgium. That's where I get most of my rivets, and I know that they're a really good quality rivet and they don't break away. But I have a few other suppliers where I also get some from here in Australia, and I will link to that down below in the description of some places that I know have good rivets. Sometimes you see them cheap on places like AliExpress and they're just really soft and they just bend. So I'm not saying that all AliExpress sellers are poor quality. There are good ones there too, but just be mindful if you're getting them at really cheap prices, there's a good chance that they will be cheap and nasty rivets. So after all that work making your bag, you don't want to be messing around with a cheap and nasty rivet. So basically, to set your rivet with the anvil and setter, you would just poke your rivet through the hole, grab your cap, and because I'm using 8mm caps for all these, it doesn't matter which cap I grab for the rivet, they all fit. And when you hear it click, you have it like that ready to go. And in the case of the anvil and setter, you would just put that on there with your rivet nicely nestled into the curve of the anvil, and then you will get your setter, which come in different sizes, so you have the right size on the top here. And this may be a little bit small. If it's too small, you end up damaging your cap. You need to make sure that you have the right size setter. Now I do regularly set my 8mm caps with a 9mm setter because that's what I have. I don't have an 8mm setter, I have a 9mm setter and a 6mm setter. So I find that I can set the 8mm with ease with the 9. If for some reason you have just set your rivet and then discovered you've got your back strapped back to front or something like that, and we've all done it, you can actually remove these rivets. There is a special tool for doing that, which punches a hole in the center of your rivet and somehow it punches it out, but I haven't used one of those. I have a hubby that gets attached to one of these things. It has a cutter and he cuts it away like, well, I don't know how he does it, but he does it with one of these, and that way you can get your rivet out and redo it. It's not an easy task with one of these, and that's why I get my hubby to do it. But I like the idea of the rivet setting tool, and one day I intend to get one of those and give them a whirl, but I am told that they are very effective. So there you have it, rivets. I hope you've enjoyed this little mini tutorial, and I hope that you will no longer find rivets scary. Please subscribe and like this video and click on that bell to be notified when I add new content. And I'm going to be adding a lot more tutorials as time goes on, and if you watch carefully you might even get a free pattern or two. So if you have any special requests for video tutorials or things that you would like to see me bring to the channel, please leave a comment in the comment section below, because I'd love to hear from you. So why not subscribe to my newsletter as well? I regularly send out newsletters with customer inspirational pictures, so I can show you what everyone else has been doing with my patterns, and that's a great way to get ideas. Please do pop along to my website and check out my patterns. You might just find something that you'd like to try. You'll find them at www.chriswdesigns.com, and for the Aussies to have them in AUD, you'll find them at www.chriswdesigns.com.au. And if you like this video, hit the like button. And if you didn't like this video, don't hit the down button. And until next time, catch you later.